Hello, therapy enthusiasts of the world. My name is Chaka, and welcome to the very first video upload on the CBT Consultancy channel. In this video, I will be talking to you about the Knowledge, Skills, and Attitudes Portfolio, more commonly referred to as the KSA Portfolio. And this is a portfolio that some people, may I say, who want to be accredited as CBT therapists by the British Association of Behaviour and Cognitive Psychotherapists, the BABCP, need to complete. So this is the first in a series of videos in which I will be showing you what the guidance is and how to go about assembling this portfolio. In this particular video, I will be talking about whether you actually need to complete that portfolio and how much of it you need to complete. So more on the other side. Let's roll the intro. Welcome to the CBT Consultancy channel, the channel where Chaka Yumba, a CBT therapist, is joined by colleagues and leading experts in the field in discussing the vast intricacies of cognitive behavioral therapy and other evidence-based psychological therapies. For more information, please visit cbtconsultancy.com. And now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So the very first question to think about is, what is the KSA portfolio, and what purpose does it serve? So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, KSA stands for Knowledge, Skills, and Attitudes. So basically, the CBT qualification as a cognitive behavioral therapist is a postgraduate qualification. So you can't just go to university and straight from school or straight from your A levels and start training as a CBT therapist. You have to first of all do some undergraduate training, acquire some work experience, and then as a postgraduate professional qualification, you can train to be a cognitive behavioral therapist or a cognitive behavioral psychotherapist, more commonly referred to as a CBT therapist. So this is the reason why some people who want to gain accreditation by the BABCP, which is the lead organization for anything CBT in the UK and Ireland, some people would need to complete that portfolio, but not everyone. And basically, the KSA portfolio is just something that documents how you have met certain aspects of knowledge, certain skills, and certain attitudes that are required before you start training as a cognitive behavioral therapist. And that portfolio helps you just document and show how you've gained those attributes. So the first question to think about before you even sit down and start completing that portfolio is whether you need to complete that portfolio. So the BABCP views certain individuals or individuals who've done certain types of training, who have certain experience in certain fields, as having what they refer to as a core profession. So they already have those knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and therefore just their qualifications and experience is enough evidence that they've met that criteria. And such individuals do not need to complete the KSA portfolio. So the first thing you need to just find out is, do I have a core profession? And how do you find that out? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you onto the BABCP website, where you can find all the information that you need regarding the KSA. And that's the most accurate information because this is the organization that sets the standards. So why don't we do that? Why don't we go onto the BABCP website? So the easiest way to do it is just to go on Google, right? So if you go on Google and you just search for BABCP KSA, immediately you'll get the top hits from the BABCP website. So you've got a page dealing with the KSA portfolio. Let's see, it says knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And the second hit you get is the guidelines. So KSA guidelines accreditation. So this is the page that I have actually gone into, where you've got the guidelines. So we're going to go on to that page. And as you can see, this is the KSA guidelines page. And on the sidebar, the left sidebar where you've got information about accreditation, it says core professions. That's one of the links there. So if I click on that link, core professions, here you will see a list of core professions, and it even says on here, it says if you don't have a core profession or your profession isn't on the list, you must instead complete a portfolio of evidence to show that you have equivalent training and experience, and this is known as the KSA portfolio. And even if you have a core profession, it says that you must have at least 12 months experience of working in a mental health or relevant social care role whilst accountable to a senior clinician in that area. So it's not just enough to have the core profession. You do have to have 1 year, at least 1 year's worth of experience to then be considered as someone who can immediately go on to your CBT training. And also you need to maintain your registration. So for example, if you are a registered mental health nurse, you would need to maintain that registration. But it says here, once our criteria for professional qualification and experience are met, we don't require you to continue registration with your professional body. So for the year that you're gaining that experience, you would need to maintain the registration. So let's have a look at the list of core professions then. So what are the actual core professions? So we've got art therapists who are registered with the HCPC. We have accredited counselors, so counselors that are accredited with the BACP, the British Association for Counseling and Psychotherapy, the IACP, the COSCA. You've got all these different bodies: FDAP, NCSC, FNCPS. So you'd have to be accredited by one of these bodies if you're a counselor. If you're a trained, qualified professional counselor, you'd have to be accredited by one of these bodies to be considered as having a core profession. So it's not enough to just say, I'm trained, I have a degree in counseling, I deliver counseling. You'd have to be accredited by one of these professional bodies here. Medicine. So you've got either a psychiatrist or a GP, and the qualifications there and the extra training that you need to have or membership that you need to have. Then you've got a nurse who's registered with one of these bodies here that's mentioned. And then occupational therapist, you'd have to have a bachelor's of Bachelor of Science with honors in occupational therapy, or Masters of Science, or a diploma of the College of Occupational Therapists, and on top of everything, and on top of the qualifications, you'd have to be HCPC registered. Then you've got someone who's got training as a psychotherapeutic counselor, and they would have to be registered with the UKCP. You've got the social workers, so you've got the qualifications here for a social worker and the appropriate registrations as well. Then with clinical and counseling psychology, you would have to have this doctorate in either fields and registered with the HCPC. Educational psychology, again, you have to have a doctorate, BPS chartership and HCPC registration. Health psychology, there you've got the qualification in health psychology, your chartership with the BPS and your HCPC registration. And then you've got forensic psychology there, the qualification, BPS chartership, HCPC registration. So that's the list of core professions. So if you have any of these professions here and the appropriate registrations, you don't need to complete the KSA. Further down the list, it talks about core professions, what was considered as core professions prior to the 1st of October 2020, because they keep updating the list of core professions. So before you start the process, you just have to go to the page to this page and see what's the current status with core professions. It says that if you had one of these professions, then you can still apply for accreditation without completing a KSA. So that's before the 1st of October 2020. And you'd have to show evidence that you had those qualifications before that then. So I'm just going to scroll through them. I'm not going to talk about them, but I've shown you where to find the information. So basically, these are the only people that can have their training in CBT and apply for accreditation without completing the KSA. Any other professions you might have, no matter how close they are here, or if you don't have the appropriate registration, you would have to complete the KSA. So I'm going to go back to the guidelines for the KSA. So looked at core professions. So now the next thing you need to find out is whether you need to complete the full KSA or whether you can complete a condensed KSA. So I'm just going to roll back a page, and on the guidelines here, you can see that there are some professions that are eligible for a condensed KSA portfolio. So basically what that means is that you're not going to do the full portfolio. There are some sections of the portfolio that you don't need to complete, or they're called criteria you don't need to complete. So let's go into those professions then that are eligible for the condensed KSA portfolio. So if you are what's called a CAP, or a clinical associate in applied psychology from Scotland, you do a condensed portfolio. You only need to do criteria number 4, criteria number 4, criteria number 12, and criteria number 14. If you've done medicine, foundation doctors, and you're GMC registered, then you do four criteria: number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 14. If you are an NMC registered nurse with adult nursing, you do criterion 3, 4, and 14. So you've got the NMC registered nurse, children's nursing, they do number 3, number 4, and number 14. If you're an NMC registered nurse with midwifery, you do these criteria here. You do quite a bit there, and then and then it gives you the list for other registered nurses, physiotherapists, play therapists. Now, I think this is the one that maybe confuses a lot of people, so I'm going to spend a bit of time on this. So if you're a psychological well-being practitioner, you can do a condensed portfolio, okay? But there are certain conditions you have to meet in order to be able to do a condensed portfolio. So if you are registered as a PWP, a psychological well-being practitioner, either with the BPS or with the BABCP, you can do a condensed portfolio, but there are some conditions that you have to meet. So you need to have a psychology degree which meets the BPS graduate basis for registration, and that included life stages of human development. In that case, so if you're a PWP, just gonna bring myself back onto the screen. So you're a PWP, you've got a degree in psychology that meets the BPS graduate basis membership, and it contained an element of life and human stages, then let's just go back to our page there. Then you can do a condensed portfolio, and you're only doing 3 criteria. You're doing criterion 4, criterion 13, and criterion 14. You don't necessarily have to be registered now as a PWP. You just have to have been registered at some point. So maybe you're still registered as a PWP, or maybe you lapsed your registration for whatever reason, either the BPS, which is the British Psychological Society, or the BABCP, which is the British Association of Behavioural and Cognitive Psychotherapists, and you have this specific degree here, then you can do condensed portfolio for 13 and 14. There is another option as well for PWPs to do a condensed portfolio. So very similar to the previous one. So you are either or have previously been registered with the BABC or BABCP or the BPS. You've got a psychology degree that meets the BPS graduate basis for registration, but it didn't include the life stages and human development. Then you do, in addition to number 4, 13, and 14, you also do criterion number 1. So these are the only two cases in which a PWP can do a condensed portfolio. So if you're a PWP and you've never been registered with either the BPS or the BABCP, you cannot do a condensed portfolio. If you're a PWP and you don't have a psychology degree, or you don't have that specific psychology degree, let's say you have a psychology degree but it doesn't meet the BPS graduate basis for registration, then you have to do a full KSA portfolio. There's just no two ways about it. That's just the reality. So you have to meet those specific requirements for you to be able to do a condensed portfolio. So I'm just gonna go back to the page. So that's PWPs. Then you've got speech and language therapists. Again, you have to be HCPC registered. Then you do a condensed portfolio where you do criterion 1, 3, 4, 8, and 14. But basically, all you need to do is you need to come onto this page. You need to come onto the page for the condensed portfolio and see if you meet the criterion for doing, or the criteria for doing a condensed portfolio, and then you can figure out how much of the KSA portfolio you need to do. That's definitely the first thing I would be doing if I was thinking of either starting my CBT training or starting off with my KSA portfolio, or thinking about accreditation. So there are some professions that require a full portfolio, which is everything else apart from what I've shown you so far on this video. So let's just go into that page and see what they say. So they're saying that completing this portfolio allows you to demonstrate how you meet our requirements for mental health or related training and experience, which is what I was saying. That for you to train as a CBT therapist, this is a postgraduate qualification. You already need to meet some prerequisites that indicate that you can have that postgraduate professional training. So some people have to complete the full portfolio, even if they think that they meet most of the criteria. So this is a list of people that might think, well, I probably meet the criteria. So if you're a teacher of special education, for example, you're a counselor, you're not one of those that I showed you that are in the core professions, you have completed certain psychology degrees, you're a PWP, but you don't have a psychology degree, or you haven't got the registration with the BABCP or BPS, you're a children's and wellbeing practitioner, maybe you've completed training in medicine, but you're not registered with anybody. So if you're on this list, you still have to complete the KSA portfolio. And if your profession is not mentioned on this list, it doesn't mean that you don't need to complete the KSA portfolio. If your profession is not in the core profession list, and your profession is not in the list of, or your profession and your profession qualifications, registration, they're not in the list of professions that are eligible for condensed portfolio, you have to do the full KSA. So for example, I was a PWP before training as a CBT therapist. I was registered with the BABCP as a PWP, but I didn't have a psychology degree that met the specific criteria that they ask for in there. So I had to do the full KSA portfolio. So it's really, really important that you come on these pages that I've just shown you. You look through you look through the list of core professions. You look through the list of professions that can do a condensed portfolio. If you're not in any either of those, then just understand that you have to do the KSA portfolio. And some people go around asking. So they ask their friends, they ask their lecturers at the university, they start emailing the BABCP. You won't get a different answer. You will, if you're not on those pages that I've shown as co-profession or eligible for condensed portfolio, you have to do the full KSA. And the sooner you accept that, if you have to do a full KSA, then the easier you can it will be for you to just get started with the process. Now, I'm just going to mention a couple more things before I wrap up this video regarding the KSA. So where do you start from? So the first thing is just to figure out, do you actually need to do it? How much of the KSA do you need to do? Now, once you've figured out whether you need to do it and how much you need to do it, my suggestion, this is just my suggestion, is the the an important thing that you need to figure out is if you need references, start thinking about who can provide those references. Now, when you do the KSA, some of the criteria require that someone countersigns that criterion, they countersign your statement. Some of them actually require a full reference from someone. And if you have to do the full portfolio, so in my case, because I had to do the full portfolio, I had to do the 14 criteria. I needed, I think 6 of the criteria, I needed a counter signature to my personal statement. And then there are 3 criteria, criterion 11, criterion 12, and criterion 13 require you to have a full reference. So somebody has to sit down and write a reference supporting how you actually meet that criterion. So if you need all those signatures, so in the end I needed I needed around sort of 9-10 people to provide either a signature or um, a reference, a full reference. What I did was I drew up a list of who could actually either provide a counter signature or provide a full reference. And I started contacting these people as quickly as I could. And there were people that immediately agreed to provide a signature or to provide a reference, and they did it. There were people that agreed and then changed their minds. And then there were people that outright just said no, that they wouldn't provide either a signature or a reference. Or some people may not be contactable in your case. So that's why you probably need to prioritize that if you want to do your KSA. And I'm just going to show you one more thing before we wrap up this video. This is the guidelines for assembling your KSA portfolio. And as you can see, it's got an introduction. It gives you guidance on how to construct the portfolio and provide evidence. And then it lists all the criteria. So as I said, there's 14 criteria. So let's just try and get to the page just where we've got the criteria. So you've got the criteria here. So it tells you the name of the criterion, and then it tells you what evidence you need to provide. So for some of them, for some people who will be completing the portfolio, they have to submit their KSA portfolio directly to the BABCP. So that's if your course is not accredited, or if your course was, say, for example, level 1 accredited and there was no KSA marker on the course, then you'll have to submit it directly to the BABCP. So they tell you what evidence you provide, and also if your KSA was marked as part of the training, of your CBT training. That's why it says minimum evidence for course assessment. So then the evidence is different. So you have to look at each criteria and just figure out, do I need to provide a reference for this criterion? Do I need to provide a counter signature? What extra evidence do I need to provide? So those are the things you need to think about early on when you start working on your KSA portfolio, and you will find all the guidance on here with each of the criteria, and it's very straightforward. So if you land on this page that I showed you from Google, KSA guidelines, you've got guidelines here, guidelines for assembling and assessing KSA portfolio. So you just download that document and it will give you all the guidance you need. That's really about it with the first stages of assembling your KSA portfolio. So you have to figure out whether you have a core profession where you don't need to do the portfolio, whether you have a profession and experience and registration where you can do a condensed portfolio, or you need to do the full portfolio. And if you have to do either condensed or the full portfolio, figure out whether you need references or counter signatures and start contacting people who can do that for you before you even get stuck into the actual KSA portfolio. So I hope that's helpful. In my next video, I will be talking to you about KSA number 1 and how to go about writing your first criterion. So I hope to see you then. And until then, remember, a healthy mind is a wealthy mind. See you next time. You've been watching the CBT Consultancy channel. For more information, please visit cbtconsultancy.com. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more such content. Until next time, from me, Chaka Yumba, and my panel, it's goodbye.